Welcome to my first ever podcast. My podcast is called Thoughts with Lakshman. In my podcast, I'm going to try and make as many as I can, probably one or two a week. And in my podcast, I want to discuss language learning, specifically with German, German history, and the connection it has with philosophy. Because there are a lot of famous German philosophers like Immanuel Kant that we can discuss his work about. And with the Berlin Wall and why people acted the way they did after it, or the anthropology of it. And that's what I'm going to be doing in this podcast. I'm going to talk about East and West Berlin, why people acted the way they did after, some of the effects of it. We're also going to talk about a movie that kind of highlights it. But yeah, I hope you are interested. These are a few things that interest me, so I wanted to talk about them in a podcast, especially given the coronavirus situation that we can't really go out and do anything. And I have some free time, and I think a podcast would be a great way to use it. So to start with, um, obviously, Germany has a very rich history. They were involved in both world wars and a very rich recent history. They were involved in both world wars, and in 1992, the Berlin Wall was taken down. So after Germany lost in World War II, they were the Allied powers were very focused on separating Germany into different parts because they didn't want Germany to be very powerful again because they didn't trust Germany after what they did in World War II. So the eastern part of Germany went to the Soviet Union, and the western part went to Britain, France, and the United States. There were three western parts. They were all the same size, or they were all smaller, and the eastern part was a bit larger, but all of the three western parts went to Western countries who had capitalist economic systems. Now, there was a lot of conflict over Berlin because it was a very important city. It still is today. It's the capital of Germany. And even though it was part of the Soviet Union's part, it was part of Eastern Division. Um, the United States, Great Britain, and France were very interested, and they tried very hard to acquire Berlin. Now, what ended up happening was the western part of Germany was capitalist. So they were very successful. As we've seen in history, capitalist economic systems normally have been very successful. And the western part of Germany was booming, the side controlled by the United States, Britain, and France. On the other hand, the eastern part of Germany wasn't doing so well. The Soviets were communists, and um, the eastern part of Germany was not doing very well. So as a result, a lot of people from East Germany traveled to West Germany to work. So a lot of highly skilled professionals traveled to West Germany to work. A lot of students went to West German colleges. And from 1945 to 1961, 16 years after World War II, 15 to 20% of East Germany's population actually fled to the West. So Soviet leaders had enough. They decided to close Berlin's border. They thought that too many skilled people were leaving. They didn't want to take it anymore. And the night of it, so they didn't give anyone notice. So there have been lots of books about this. Like, for example, when I was younger, I read A Night Divided, and it talks about a girl and how her father was on a trip in West Berlin because people spend a lot of time, a lot of people from East Germany spend a lot of time in West Germany, and that was very common. And her father was in West Germany for a trip, and she never got to see her father again for many years after the wall was put up because they were given no notice. And it happened during the night of August 12th, 1961, and into the early morning of August 13th. And construction workers worked very fast. They put barbed wire at the top of the wall, and they didn't, like I said earlier, they didn't tell anyone. They did it secretly in the night. And the wall is over, well, the wall originally was over 100 miles long when they built it, which is pretty impressive that they actually were able to accomplish that all in one night. Um, Over time, the wall became more sophisticated and well guarded, and they had soldiers. They had soldiers taking shifts along the wall, making sure that no one crossed and escaped over. Now, even though they tried their best to make sure that no one escaped over, a lot of people actually ended up doing so. Some made tunnels and escaped through tunnels through the to West Germany. Some swam across. So there were people still tried to escape, but the wall was very well guarded. Nothing compared to like the DMC today, but it was still at the time very. The defense there was very highly sophisticated. Now, foreigners were allowed to cross the border. So, if a tourist came in and um, wanted to cross into West Germany, they came into East Berlin and they wanted to cross into West Berlin, they could do that. But East Germans could not cross the border, and East Germans who were in West Germany could not cross back to East Germany. Soldiers also, like I said, soldiers, and they were very cold-hearted because there were actually stories. I think in A Night Divided too, they talk about a soldier who actually killed a man who tried to climb up at night and jump across, and that soldier actually had family in West Berlin himself. Um, Over 171 people were killed trying to escape, and the GDR, that's the German Democratic Republic, they controlled East Germany. And part of the reason that people wanted to get out of East Germany is because it was a capital. It was not capitalist. It was a socialist system. Um, they were under a dictatorship from the Soviet Union, and a lot of people had a lot of economic hardships. And until 1989, they dealt with that. And Ronald Reagan, a conservative president from 1981 to 1989, actually played a big role in helping bring down the wall. He challenged the Soviets to do so in a famous speech. And on November 9th, 1989, the GDR, or German Democratic Republic, allowed East Germans to travel into West Berlin. That's when the vote. That's when they discussed it. It didn't actually become official until October 3rd, 1990. But that was a very important day. A lot of people traveled across. A lot of people got to see their family. But um, there were still negatives from that because there were a lot of products in Germany that were only successful because there was no real free market. It was a communist government. So, for example, Spreewald pickles are really loved by many East Germans. And once the Berlin Wall came down and East and West German were both capitalist economic countries, um, Spreewald pickles did not do very well in the free market, and they soon disappeared. And a lot of people from East Germany have a feeling that's known as Ostalgia. Now, means East in German, and nostalgia is an English word, nostalgia. So they called it Ostalgia, and that's really the word really encapsulates the emotional feeling towards East Germany that many people still feel today. Um, Many East Germans had become accustomed to. Now, the surveys have been taken by news sites like the DW, and they actually said that only 15 to 20% of people of East Germany, now obviously this is a poll, this doesn't include everyone, but 15 to 20% of East Germans were happy with the communists in the GDR. So obviously it was a major positive to bring down the wall and reunifying East Germany with West Germany. But like Spreewald pickles, and also like there's a certain type of wine that was very popular in East Germany that didn't really survive in the free market. Um, Mustard from Bansen is another example. And I guess it's interesting because there's been a lot of articles. There's actually been a movie also on this, and the movie is the movie. one second. So there's also been a movie on this, and the movie talks about the movie's called Goodbye Lenin, and in Goodbye Lenin, main characters are a brother and a sister and their mother, and their mother is a very loyal supporter of the Communist Party in East Germany. Now, a few days before um, the wall gets taken down, the mother goes in a coma. She has, I think, like a heart attack or something, and she's in coma for a few months, and she's completely unaware that the wall came down. And funny enough, the reason that she is in coma is because she saw her son attending an anti-GDR rally. And she was so shocked by it because she was a very loyal supporter of the GDR. So the doctors tell her son and her daughter that they have to prevent her mother from any traumatic events, anything that could really cause her to have another heart attack, otherwise she might not be able to survive it. And she had a heart attack the first time just by seeing her son attending a rally. So the daughter and the son were thinking how she would react if she saw that the wall had been taken down. So the movie's pretty interesting because it shows the son and the daughter's effort to prevent their mom from finding out that the wall was taken down. So they keep her mom at home as much as possible. Whenever they drive, they make her wear a blindfold so she can't see anything. And she doesn't drive, by the way. She sits in the car. They also, when she wanted to watch TV, watch the news, um, her uncle, well, the daughter and the son's uncle, recorded with them a TV show. So he pretended to wear a tie. They had like a green screen behind him. They filmed it, and he tried to, and he also wore like a fake mustache and everything, and like a fake wig, so he looked different. And they tried to replicate a TV show so that their mother could watch TV. They also tried to find Spreewald pickles because her mother loved Spreewald pickles before it, and they kind of disappeared after East and West Germany merged together. And it showed in the movie really shows her son's, how far he goes to get Spreewald pickles. Also, I mean, another big part of the movie is that there's a conflict between the daughter and the son on whether they should tell her mother or not. And I won't spoil it, but the son fights for them not to tell. The daughter thinks that they should tell. Um, I think, I think that's a great example that shows the Ostalgia in Germany. There's a lot also today. You can see that a lot of surveys have shown that a lot of East Germans, even though they're very happy that the wall came down, they miss a lot of their products, like Spreewald pickles, mustard, and I think it's interesting that people can take positives out of something that's widely regarded to be very negative. Also, it shows that people react to things too. I mean, you can look at it in a positive and a negative way. You could look at it in a positive way by saying, "Wow, you would think that people would be very angry about the situation, disappointed, sad, whatever about the situation in East Germany, but people found positives." Or you could also look at people being ungrateful and that they're complaining that they don't have their favorite products, even though they have freedom. Now, I mean, not freedom, but economic freedom. But um, those are two ways you could look at it. But I think, I just think it's very interesting that something as small as pickles can represent so much more. Pickles represent the emotional conflict that people had over coming back into West Germany. And yeah, and not just pickles. There's also wine, but the mustard, but mainly pickles. I've seen pickles, many examples of pickles, and most articles talk about the Spreewald pickles. That I read an article on them, and they said that you have them with bread. You slice them up and you eat them with bread, and Germans have them breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Um, Other than that, I think I'm finished for today. I yeah, so I hope you enjoyed listening to the podcast. I want to just as a conclusion, we spoke about Eastern. First, we spoke about we gave a bit of an introduction. We then spoke about some German history with World War II, the after effects of World War II. You know how the western part of Germany, because remember the Allies wanted to split Germany up, and after the war because they were scared that Germany would become powerful again. So the western part of Germany belonged to capitalist governments. The eastern part belonged to the Soviet Union, socialist and dictatorship government. And we spoke about the after effects of it, why West Germany was so much more, West Germany was really booming economically compared to East Germany. And then tons of workers from East Germany fled to West, or not fled, but 15 to 20% of East Germany's population went to West Germany. Then the wall, then not the wall first, but first they put a ban on travel. Then the wall came up, and we spoke about Ostalgia after the wall came down, because products that people had become so accustomed to in East Germany no longer survived in the free market. Then we spoke about examples like A Night Divided and Goodbye Lenin, a movie. A Night Divided's a book. And they both encapsulate the emotional conflict over the Berlin Wall. I hope you enjoyed my first podcast, and I look forward to making many more. Goodbye.